Hello, everyone. Welcome to this interesting webinar. My name is Grace Nanyazi, Manager Information Systems at the National ID Authority in Uganda. I'm also privileged to be the ambassador for ID4AFRICA representing Uganda. And I'm here to moderate a panel of 4 experts to tell us more how safely we can travel in this period of COVID. So today we are going to have a discussion with the topic digital ID for travel and population flow management. I'm sure all of us would like to know how safely we are able to move around and survive this period. But we also know that the world is moving digital. So every technology innovation is around digital economy. And digital ID is one of those areas that are going to facilitate the digital economy. And then when you talk about movements, we see most countries have introduced e-passports to enable this happen. A number of airports, you just have to show your face and then the gates open automatically. So to start these discussions, we are going to have experts from CETA. Then we'll have Emperor Technology, we'll have Iris ID, and Vision Box. We are going to start with Imad from CETA. He's going.
I'm sorry, Grace. We still have not seen Imad, but we can start with Emperor Chinbun.
Oh,
yes.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Sorry, we are going to start with Emperor Technology. So we have a general manager, Chin. So Chin, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you. So my name is Chin Bun Lu. So I'm the general manager for Emperor Technology and always happy to be part of the panelists in this discussion. I understand we have only 15 minutes, so let's get started. So good evening, good morning, wherever you are. So basically today we're going to, as what Grace has just mentioned earlier, today basically we need to discuss how to move people safely. And what is more important today is how do we manage the movement of population in a very challenging time like COVID-19 period. So is it a physical passport? Is it good enough today? Or do we need to have something that is even more powerful in terms of a digital identity that's able to map out the route of this particular person when he is traveling? So this is what we are going to talk about today. So let's get started. So now, first and foremost, we are now in a very beautiful continent of Africa, which is very interesting. So a little bit of Africa before we start. It's a continent that hosts approximately 1.3 billion based on 2018 statistics, 16% of the world's population. And what is also very, I mean, this is really a bit of geography. It's covering 20% of the Earth land area and 6% of the surface of the Earth. So, and what is really very interesting and really amazes everybody in Africa is that it holds a large diversity of ethnicities, cultures, and language. So this is something about the African continent, and also Africa continent, its diversity and beauty, which means that in Africa itself, there is a, I would say, in terms of its diversity, in terms of telecommunication and IT infrastructure in Africa. So you have very metropolitan cities in Africa, for example, Johannesburg, Nairobi. So, and you also have very challenging rural areas in Africa as well. So how do we manage this kind of diversity in this very challenging time, which means you perhaps need to have an identity that you can identify and authenticate and verify a person online and offline. So this is something which we are going to introduce along the way, what Emperor Technology or MTech in short, what we have developed and what something that we can share in our experience as well. Okay, first we look at building an identity. So who am I? So basically, in today's context, there's always identity fraud, financial exclusion if you don't have an identity, human trafficking. You do not have access to government services, sometimes if you do not have an identity as well. And also sometimes even social benefits, because you are unable to prove that you are a citizen of that country, that you are actually entitled to certain social benefits that the country is giving. So how to build an ID value and management chain. So this part, I think, to everyone and in the audience, I believe this is something that is very, very familiar. So you need to go to an office, application, enrollment, data management. You personalize, you either get a card or you get a book or you get, so this is the normal workflow that you will probably be expecting. Okay, so now what we are going to share, I'm going through this very quickly. So the second half of this is how do we issue an identity? And that's where the M code comes about. Okay, and what is M code today? M code is actually a digital identity that is built with what we call as an encryption device, and you are able to issue this digital identity into either a mobile phone, a piece of paper, or even a card. And so the four main factors that forms the building block is we have the blockchain, the biometric, the artificial intelligence, as well as facial recognition. So this is something which what we call the use of digital technology to facilitate a digital identity of a person. So basically this is something which is to regain the confidence of a citizen, as well as we put less pressure on the government in terms of identifying a person. Now, how does the M code works? So first, once you have the identity, you can scan the M code. For those who have missed this part, I think you're always welcome to go back to ID4, and we have our workshop on the video that actually shows in the video how this works. So basically you present a M code to a device. And for this device, what it does is that it will recognize your face. And then once we are able to end with the information that is encrypted inside the M code, the facial recognition the terminal will be able to match the information that is in the code itself together with the device. So at the same time, with this particular terminal, you are also able to update the health status, as well as also to record this particular person when he enters this particular premises. Okay, and so what it's pretty amazing also, what I can say is that we have even developed this, even if you wear a mask, we are also still able to identify that person because we do have the information inside the M code. All right, so how does this digital identity solution works? So basically, M code is an encrypted QR code plus biometric. So in the previous questions that were being asked is that, what is the encryption standard for M code? I think the standard answer or the answers that I have provided before, I can share here. It's the M code is encrypted using based on ICAO standards, document 9303. So the M code itself is encrypted with biometrics data. And beyond the biometrics data, we can also include the personal information, travel route, health status, and any other information that is needed that needs to be updated along the way for this particular person when he moves around in the country or moves around in the city. Okay, now, why we need to have a digital identity that needs to be done? Today, currently, we are facing an identity gap, as I mentioned, and also an identity theft. So which means that there are people in the world that are using, I would say, the challenges or the issues that we are facing. And this is something which is what we are trying to prevent. Okay, and with this particular solution that we have provided, or this technology that we have developed, this is something which I would say it's economical and it's smart and it's convenient. Now, the M code issuance, we are going a little bit on the technical part, which This part of it is how does M code actually works. Okay, if you can see from here, we actually register the person, the ID information, and this is then generated from the back-end system. And this is again using what we call as relationship analysis based on the platform that we have developed. And with this, we are able to generate a code. And each time this code is generated, and then it reissues again into the application or the person's mobile app. So at every single point in time, the person that moves around, each time it is being updated and generated at the same time. And that's how we are able to keep track of this person's movement, as well as how he's able to, we are able to track him in terms of his health status, in terms of temperature, where he has gone. So at least we are able to monitor the citizens' movement. And of course, in this challenging period, as well as we will know how is he, whether is he infected or not infected, and we are able to detect this kind of things almost immediately. Now, how does AI come into use? Okay, now we have used AI in terms of a facial recognition algorithm, and the system is able to accurately compare different color skin tone. And in addition to this, what it performs is also able to perform facial recognition for babies and for the elderly people. Now, power of AI in population flow analysis. So in the powered by AI technology, the system is able to automatically analyze the traveler having the possibility of coming into contact with an infected person. And so this, once this is being done, this will then be able, that means each time when he travels or he enters any premises, his temperature will then be taken. Once he goes into a terminal that is being that is will scan his temperature, and each time it will be updated using block and captured using blockchain, encrypted using blockchain, and again this will be able to map up to say that whether this person suddenly have a spike in terms of his temperature, and we will have the AI intelligence analysis engine at the back end running, and we will be able to send a detection of what is happening and able to inform the necessary authorities that there could possibly be a infected person in the group that he has been traveling. Okay, building a trust in the digital world, and that is something which is very important today, which means that there is always this concern about how safe it is, how do we protect our identity in the digital world. Today, everybody is of course very concerned, and as I mentioned earlier, we this M code is encrypted with the ICAO standards in terms of encryption. What is important that we need, I would want to emphasize here, is that the carrier of M code can be very diversified. It can be a smartphone, it can be a card, it can be even on a piece of paper. And what I would like to emphasize here, it's also not limited by the network environment, which means that it supports online and offline verification. Okay, and this is again how we authenticate the person. You can use a mobile phone, which you can see it on the mobile phone. It can be a smart card. It can be issued even on a piece of paper, which means that the person can carry this piece of paper and then he can identify himself through the terminal, and then we are able to verify who is he. All right, some case studies. What we have done for M code, I think for this particular very challenging year, we have, when at the height of the pandemic in China, we have successfully implemented for all inbound traveler, because there is also a limit of cross cities traveling. So during the hype, there is also this inbound traveler control into Shenzhen. So in this part of it, we Emperor Technology is very happy that we were able to come up with this M code and the facial recognition terminal and the cloud system, and we are able to implement this very quickly in a lot of what we call smart service halls, and also access into industrial parks. and the management of takeaway services, which really effectively prevented and controlled the epidemic from being spread, and we are able to control the movement very, very effectively. The next is that we have, with the M code itself, we have also implemented in 203 airports across China, which means today in China, for a Chinese citizen, if you have forgotten to bring your personal ID, that is the national ID, you will still be allowed to board the plane and note with the M code that you
sorry,
have.
Mr. Chin, you
Yes.
have we have 2 minutes to go.
Sure.
So,
So this is the, I mean, just the last part is that we have also implemented 203 airports across China for the M code solution. And also this is part also of the building of the smart city contribution to the smart city, I would say, initiative in Shenzhen. All right, with this, I would like to finish off my presentation. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask either through the Wova, or I'd be happy to take any questions later after the panelists. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chin. Just a quick one. Does the technology only consider temperature? Because I know there are epidemics that don't really raise temperatures.
Grace, can you just repeat the question one more time? I can't hear very clearly what you have just.
Is the technology only considering temperatures, body temperatures?
At this moment, the technology it's based on temperature reading, because we developed this during the time of the hype of pandemic, and that is the time where the temperature is the one that is the most, I would say, the easiest to identify if you have been infected.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen.
Thank you very much.
So stay around. We shall be having some questions at the end of the presentations. We have a number of delegates participating in the iPhone competition. So right now we are going to have China.
Okay, thank you, Grace, and good morning to everyone. We're really excited. This is now day 3, and for those who have been participating in the grand race, we now have the top 10 runners in the lead as of day 2. So as you know, each day the points accumulate. We have now seen where the stakes have changed. Senegal and Nigeria are almost neck and neck in the lead. So if you're still with us, you have a high chance of winning by attending today. We also have RD Congo, Ethiopia, Algeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Eswatini, Tanzania, Malawi, and South Africa. So if you're watching with us today, then you would want to stay with us, because you could end up winning this game. Let me just change this so that you can see it for those watching in French. All right, so stay with us, because now the points have tripled. We have each sweep letter that's announced, it's going to be 300 points. And for just attending, each minute is awarded 1 point. So that just means that you will want to take out your notes and make a record of the next sweep letter that's going to be played. And yes, do stick around. Please do not enter your letters until the end of the day. So we do have 8 sweep letters. And at the end of this, then you can enter your scores quickly within 1 hour, so that we can make sure that we have received your entries. Okay, so I will now play the next sweep letter for the day.
The first sweep letter of the day is D.
La première lettre sweep du jour est le D.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. Let the best man win. Now being joined by Imad from CETA to discuss about border management during the pandemic. Imad, take the floor.
Thank you. Hello, I'm seems having difficulty to share the presentation.
Okay, I think the team is going to help, but in the meantime, viewers, please send in your questions through the Q&A. We shall be able to have the experts respond to them.
Okay, Imad, we can bring up your presentation for you. They sent it to us in the file, so we'll just do that now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I apologize for the technical difficulty first, and now just sharing the presentation. I would like to also say that the beauty of working from home during the time of pandemic is that there are certain things you don't control. So right now where I am around my home, there is a lot of work. So if you hear any noise, I apologize in advance. I tried to be in a very quiet place, but if you hear anything, it's just the noise that I cannot control. So today I would like to talk to you about border management in general during this time of pandemic. If we go to the next slide, please. Well, obviously, as you know, the world is very much interconnected. Before COVID, there were a lot of people traveling from many places and transiting in many hubs, and COVID made that very difficult. And at one point, governments were around the world completely shutting down, only to get to a point later on to open those borders. But during the summer, a lot of the countries that depends on tourism, they've opened their borders. Some managed very well, some did not, and unfortunately now we see ourselves, there is a second spike or a second wave as they call it. And I would like to talk to you today about the framework around the proper management of such a pandemic when there's a lot of unknowns for countries and how they would manage this, in addition to the traditional border management risk that they need to manage related to immigration and security that they have to do anyways. Now, just before I go through that, just want to say that COVID is more like a 9/11, because while before that we had SARS and MERS and avian flu, Ebola, and all kind, the speed at which COVID spread and the fact that it was primarily spread through the air transport made border management different. So I think when we get back, and we're starting to see new normal in terms of traveling, but some of this is with us to stay even after COVID is not with us, which I hope is going to be very soon. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so as I said, COVID added to the fact that governments always have to worry about border security in terms of immigration, in terms of terrorism, in terms of customs smuggling. But now COVID added the health aspect. So the health risk today is a prime risk, is the main risk that is being managed. Later on, though, after COVID and after we go back to normal, it will still be a high risk that governments will still need to manage. So if we look on a very high level, the operational needs for border management to manage health risk in general and pandemic specifically. What we've seen, if we go back in memory to March timeframe, governments were surprised. They found out that they lack the control to identify and restrict access to only a portion of travelers based on health conditions, but also based on their origin, destination, citizenship, who they were been closer to. All of these parameters were not easily integrated into our existing border management systems. And that led to countries unanimously around the world, one country after the other, completely closing their borders. Obviously, don't need to tell you about the economic cost of this and all other costs that are related to several months of the entire world being completely shut down. They've started opening up, as I mentioned earlier, in the summer, and then some were successful and some were not. But a key point around this is those who manage quickly and proactively possess information system that enable them to proactively amend their border rules back to a passenger level, where that passenger came from, where that passenger transited, their journeys in the past 14 days, who they sat next to, what their conditions are, and so on. Those who were able to either quickly build that or had it already, which few countries, very few had, were able to open up their borders and manage the risk. And they didn't see a spike. Now we have 15 minutes today, so I can't share a lot of statistics, but you probably know which countries managed it well and which countries actually didn't. And now having to go through another dreadful shutdown of both borders and maybe also stay at home and that sort of things. So another aspect that wasn't there that is now started to coming and we believe is with us to stay is something around travel authorization, which existed as lightweight visa before, but related to health questionnaires. Today, if you go to anywhere, you will have to fill on all kinds of forms, which I'll probably show in the next slides. And based on your answers and based on, what you provide and based on certain information that airlines send to the governments, your admissibility is determined. But because this is a very manual process, we take just one case study without naming the country. Their border control average was 30 seconds before the pandemic. Today, it's 8 minutes. Now, you may say, well, the volume is much below what it used to be. It's around 15, 20% of pre-COVID. Yet, even with that, 8 minutes per passenger is actually with the social distancing requirements that countries have to implement is leading to hours and hours. The passengers arrive, they either remain in the plane or they remain somewhere or they line up, hopefully not physically close, and it takes hours to clear, although the number of flights is much below what it used to be. Even with the 8 minutes, there is a lot of chances for forgery. We've seen a lot of that in terms of the PCR test, in terms of any other documents, or the accuracy of the information is based on what people write. Well, it's very prone to errors, but also prone to forgery for those who don't want to disclose exactly the status. So we're seeing queues. We're seeing governments actually suffering. They're admitting people, but not having the ability to screen them properly. So if I go back, to the previous slide. So we're seeing something which I will cover is the health travel authorization is now key on a lot of governments' mind. They want to automate that process. They cannot deal with paper-based, while they have spent a lot of money in information systems to make sure that they can facilitate the travel of people into their borders. Another thing that is obviously everyone knows about is, and it's here to stay, is a proof of record, a proof of health records. So the PCR test, hopefully very soon with the immunization records, you are not going to be flying to any place in the future unless you're digitally able to submit those documents, because today, again, a lot of forgery when it comes to that. Now, if we take a minute, this is the needs from the authority that manages the border, but other authorities that exist in the same country also have a need to, if we take into account a lot of these crisis management committees that have been created to manage COVID, or the ministries of health who have been managing the crisis for the past 9 months or so, you will see a couple of requirements coming. They want to be able to identify a person and quickly trace back to their travel journeys, their social contacts during those travel journeys, and in the airports and outside the airport, of course. And one other area that is slowly becoming important for the ministries of health or the crisis management is they don't want to be caught blind again in terms of COVID all of a sudden becoming from isolated in China to becoming a pandemic to really having to close down borders and impose. So they would like a way to look at, there are many active pathogens around the world. They want to know, they want an intelligent way of being warned about these pathogens with data, no politics, and understanding the likelihood of these pathogens becoming pandemics in their shores. So if we go next, and next slide, please, and the one after. Yes. So basically what we believe, we at CETA, no, previously, sorry. Yes. What we believe at CETA is we are in need of, a multi-phase but integrated information management system that takes into the various points of the trip and collect the information, collate also information, and do the proper risk assessment at every point of the trip of a passenger. Doing it that way, it will make sure that once you arrive at the point of immigration, you can still walk through very quickly and avoid the lineups, avoid the forgery, avoid the inaccurate information. So that starts with the health traveler authorization that I've talked about. It also is complemented by the like of the API and PNR data. Preferably, this is done through an advanced passenger information process. So it's done as an IAPI and in an interactive way. So governments could allow people to board or not board based on both their health authorization, their API, their PNR. And the key point here is to relieve the pressure from airlines. Do not require airlines to do any screening. Airlines have had to go through massive losses. The impact of COVID is probably the highest on airlines. So asking them to spend more money or to do more screening or putting more burden on airlines is not going to help. And it's not going to help to secure the country's border at the end of the day. So if we deploy the various systems as you see.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Ahmed, you have 2 minutes to go.
Yes, I only have, okay. So if we deploy the system as you see here, where intelligence and risk assessment done at every step of the way, again, we believe that the passenger still can travel during pandemics and they can still go through borders, and that can be done safely. Now, if you go to my last slide, I'm just here, I urge you all after, go to health.aero. This is CETA's contribution to the industry. Look at an example of an health ETA. There is one live country there that you could potentially go to and apply for it. It actually takes your information and based on intelligent rule determines your eligibility to go. In addition to the capability to include test results, either by the passenger themselves or by the test labs. With this, I would like to thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. I have a quick one. We have a number of forgeries in the test results.
Yeah.
I don't know if the system is able to interconnect with the different labs and able to verify, or there is a way of verifying this before the passenger arrives at a destination.
Indeed, obviously this is a daunting task, and today there's a lot of frameworks out there for us to get digital records of either the test result or the vaccination. If a country where the system is deployed, the labs have a way to send digital records, then the system can very easily integrate and get those records. It's the step of digitization is an aspect that a lot of initiatives or a lot of companies around are trying to do. And unfortunately, to this date, there are lots of things like the Common Pass project, that what IATA is doing, what many other companies are trying, but there is still no uniform way that is acceptable among all countries to send that data. I think it will take a few years to get to that, but that is not going away. With COVID or without COVID, in the future, you would need a way to digitally verify your ability to fly.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. At least there are efforts towards achieving it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just stay around. There will be questions at the end. Now, I'm inviting Mr. Muhammad to take us through the contactless innovations. Muhammad?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the influence of biometrics in travel, digital ID for travel and population flow. Today, we're going to try to focus on the business of airports and how the biometrics is incorporated in the process of travel management and airport management. So the need for the airport inclusion of biometrics is in part of the passenger processing to provide them convenience and secure way of travel. And the other element of the airport and the biometric inclusion is physical security part, where they can conveniently and easily and securely move the employees of the airport from landside to airside and vice versa. And that includes a lot of other technologies beside biometrics. So as we go through the presentation, we're going to cover both elements of it. So as previous speakers talk about the impact of COVID-19 and reduction in travel. So if I'll take you back to 2018 and 19. So look at the amount of passengers travel throughout the airport. These are the top 10 airports around the world where I traveled all the time in 2018 and before, and probably went to most of these airports. So the Hartfield processed 107 million passengers. What we noticed that during this period of COVID-19, most of these airports, their passenger processing capacity reduced to like 5 to 10%. And that has impacted their revenue, their government revenue, other areas that where they have public and private partnerships. So what airport and biometric, what's driving the biometric business into the airport is how do we improve a contactless or frictionless way for processing passengers through immigration, or how the evolving solutions or maturation of solutions will be involved in incorporating the biometric technologies into those applications where we can process the passengers conveniently. How do we include these technologies so they remain familiar? So one element of it is maybe using mobile technologies, capturing their face, and then using other biometric technologies like iris recognition at the airport and sort of combining them together. All these conversations are going on, and these are the elements that's driving the inclusion of biometrics. And then how do we reduce the time and cost for airline services, such as maybe granting people access to the lounges and using biometrics for that, and other airport services. And what's happening, what we see before the COVID was there are many public-private partnerships were starting to flourish in providing these services at airports and travel destinations. So the challenges that the airports and the governments see is how do I incorporate biometric technologies that are going to be interoperate within the whole process of that traveler. So if I start from JFK and I'm going to end up in Dubai or Lagos or somewhere else, how that biometric is going to travel with me, what will happen with that biometric, how that data is going to be exchanged between these airports and government authorities, what type of global standards are going to be followed within of each of those countries, what type of experience that a passenger is going to have in JFK, will they have a similar experience that in Nigeria, Lagos, etc. So all these challenges are driving the airports and government authorities to provide frictionless solutions that they can accommodate the passengers from the time they step on the curb and all the way to the gate. Okay, so part of these discussions been happening is how do we take those technologies and solutions, and if you're traveling, you've seen a lot of kiosks. So in the United States, we have different type of kiosks. We have global entry kiosk. We have a kiosk for pre-immigration. You step in, use passport. So each of those kiosks are inserted into the process of authenticating the identity of the passengers. So and make them so they are self-observed. So basically, I don't need another third person to help me process my identity at that kiosk. I can use my passport. A biometric is used, could be fingerprint or could be a face, or could be iris recognition. Now with COVID, inclusion of COVID, a lot of these kiosks were shut down, and authorities are starting to think, what can I do to provide a contactless features? That's where a lot of these kiosk industry companies are starting to think about iris recognition or facial recognition as part of the solution implementation. And then the other piece is how do I create that biometric and keep within the GDPR and privacy element of it. So maybe we can create these transitory biometric information that the time that I use the first kiosk at the check-in or baggage drop, and the biometric traveled throughout that process when I'm at the airport. And then when I boarded the gate, the transitory biometric was removed. So all these discussions, there are lots of challenges in that process. Some is privacy concerns, some is government authorities, and the laws need to be made. But all industry, the entire aviation industry, including the government, are looking at how can we use these solutions to accommodate and expedite the travel without health concerns. So some little anecdotal data about global airport biometric automation. The kiosks are growing. 2020, how many kiosks were deployed, but the data said there are going to be about 12,000 kiosks or 10,000 kiosks will be deployed by then. But there is definitely, the traffic is going to grow. And when that traffic is going to grow, we will need more automation at these airports. So at this moment, it looks like the prediction is by 2022, the largest piece of kiosks will be in Europe and North America, and other regions are going to grow as well. Africa is predicted to have 2% of those kiosks, and we see that African continent identity is becoming a key element. And then as the travel increases, they will be using those biometric identity-enabled documents for travel purposes. So with that, I'm going to start talking about some of the use cases of iris recognition technology in the aviation application. So iris ID products are deployed across many airports across the world. So this is a sample of some of those. We provide technologies for both, either for passenger processing, immigration, or employee access control, using the non-contact, touchless, frictionless biometric of iris recognition, and in some cases, facial recognition. So as you can see here at Schiphol Airport, is one of the longest running passenger or traveler, registered traveler program. they have close to 200,000 or I'm sorry, 100,000 people registered. These are for Dutch citizens. They present their passport or their ID card, which they carry their biometrics on. They insert it. They look at the camera. The camera takes their facial recognition, face picture and iris picture simultaneously. Iris gets matched, and the person walks out. At the same time, they also provide for their employees. They have about 70,000 employees, a daily transaction of about 150,000, and they're integrated so they can take the employees from landside to airside and airside to landside. So an overall security. So the key here is that they're providing a service to their travelers so they can completely go through the border crossing process without stopping at the border desk. But the important thing here is that these are pre-registered travelers. So they have enrolled into the process and they have been vetted and they have issued a card so they can use for travel. The next experience is that the traveler without pre-registration. So in Doha, we have a system and systems installed at their gate and all the immigration desk, where the individual traveling from any country they come in, they get enrolled at the immigration desk with the IRS. The benefit that provides that if they are a frequent traveler, their documents are tied to their previously enrolled biometric. They get identified and then the process. So they have reduced the process of up to this year. They have reduced the process from about a few minutes to few seconds in processing the passengers. Similarly for the eGates, you present your passport, you don't touch anything. The gate opens, you walk up into the gate, iris camera takes a picture of your eye, and then you just walk through. That the transaction is logged. The authorities know who entered the country or who exited the country. Similarly, in Turkmenistan, they have kiosks for all travelers entering the country or exiting the country. They must stop at the kiosk. They take all their biometrics, including the iris, face, and finger. Since the pandemic, fingers have been shut down because of the concern with the spreading of the virus. However, they continue to take the iris, and like everywhere else, the traffic has been very, very slow. So the reduction in traffic, there are fewer people traveling through that airport. Then the other one that you see here, a short video, a program of CLEAR. They have about 4.4 million people enrolled in the registered travel program. The idea is that your biometric becomes your ID. You walk up, it's all contactless process. You walk up, identify yourself with the iris. Once you're identified, you go into the front of the queue. CLEAR now also offer, beside just the travel thing, they're also offering other applications, other venues such as sports events and other things using similar non-contact technologies. So we can see before the COVID, the industry, both airport, aviation, airlines, they were starting to look at how do I provide touchless, frictionless solutions so I can expedite the travel, I can reduce the stress on the passengers and make this process more convenient for the passengers and reduce the staffing requirements for checking in and boarding the passengers. We have other programs as well using iris recognition. These are pilot programs with U.S. Customs Border Protection between Mexico and U.S. border. On the other side, so we just talked about altogether the use cases where how iris recognition technology is used for processing the passengers and the travelers. But there's another element which is sometimes overlooked, is how do we provide the security blanket for the employees and convenience and privacy so they can go from airside to landside. So in Canada, all 34 airports or somewhere there, they all use iris recognition technology. They have about 200,000 employees enrolled into the process. So they present their card, they're carrying, to comply to GDPR, they're carrying their biometrics on the card. They present
Excuse
the
me,
card.
Mohammed.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You have 2 minutes to go.
Thank you very much. I'm almost done. So they carry that biometric on their card. They flash the card in front of the device. They look into the camera. The transaction is clocked, and they can walk through from airside to landside. So overall, all authorities were looking at how do we provide a frictionless solution, a touchless solution for the airport employees and the passengers at these travel location for the travelers. Then let's talk about innovation. So we have been innovating throughout this process, where we want to create a solutions and technologies that can be incorporated into lots of different applications. So where you see here, we're trying to take all the guesswork. We are increasing the size of the capture area for the passengers and let the device do all the work. It will find the idea. Passengers can be in a wheelchair. They could be short. They could be tall, and device will be able to identify. Then we have also built optical solutions that can be incorporated into kiosks and other OEM applications. So with that, I'll conclude and I'll take any questions. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you very much. You will have to wait until the presentation by George so that we can have those questions come through. And in the meantime, for those participating in the iPhone, we are going to have another sweep letter displayed. Hello.
Yes, sorry, it's coming a little bit slowly. It's coming up. Thank you,
All right.
Grace.
All right.
The second sweep letter of the day is C.
La deuxième lettre sweep du jour est le C.
All right.
Thank you.
Can now invite George to come and take us through the London Air Border Management modernization. Take the floor.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. So thank you all for inviting VisionBox to participate in this panel. Quite interesting presentations. Today we're going to speak about land and air border management modernization, although we will be specially focused on land borders, okay? So I'll start by quickly speak a bit about VisionBox, then the challenges that we encounter at African land borders, how the technology can be an enabler of the cross-border movement, and then we'll go through briefly by our portfolio and some takeaways, okay? So just quickly about VisionBox, what we intend to do is to facilitate the travelers either at the airport or at the border. We want to simplify their life through the use of their biometrics. That's our purpose. We VisionBox, we are a Portuguese company with offices spread all over the world. We have more than 80 borders using our technology, where we process about 700 million travelers per year. And we were the first company developing an eGate based on facial recognition. It's also quite important to mention that Portugal is always on the forefront of the technology for electronic government, and we are proud of supporting the government on that direction. Also, we want to illustrate that we partner not only with the border force, but also with the operators and the travel agents. We bring them together, and we also are part of the discussions of the best practices with institutions such as Frontex, EULISA, ICAO. So now that we spoke about VisionBox, let's discuss a bit the challenges that we face in the African land borders. I think that these two images are quite illustrative of the challenges of African land borders. In the first image, we are showing the use case of the pedestrians. So it's very common that at land borders, you have, in the busy borders, you have then more than 40 travelers per day. And these travelers, most of them, they might live in country A, but they work on country B, or they study on country B. So there is a strong community feeling, and besides their nationality, they feel that they belong to a community. So this type of travelers, they want to reach their work quickly. They don't want to be 15 minutes waiting on the border to be checked. Also, the land borders are essential points to dispatch goods for the African countries. The intra-trade is mostly done through the borders, and we see that the cost of shipping through African land borders is still quite high, especially because the time that is taken to verify the identity of the truck drivers, but also the needed checks on the customs that are done on the cargo. And with the African trade agreement coming on the 1st of January, we believe that technology will have an important role making sure the borders are good points of exit to expedite goods and to facilitate the cross-border movement. So now let's look a bit in detail the common problems at the African land borders. So we saw the pictures. We see that there is a manual process which brings big use, which leads to which makes these frequent travelers unhappy with the time that they take to reach to the final destination. Also, there are a lot of forged travel documents and national ID documents. Since the borders are still not at a mature digital level, it's quite difficult to have statistics and quality data that allows decision makers to do decisions with quality. Furthermore, there is no connections to external database that can reference if a traveler is a suspected traveler or not. And also in the times that we are living with the COVID-19, it's also quite important to integrate border systems with external health database to understand if, for example, if a traveler had the vaccine, didn't have the vaccine, if his PCR is negative or positive. So it's really important that at the level of land border, we take it to a next level of digital transformation, okay? So we believe that the land borders are fragile points of entry for 100 travelers. There are also, as we all know, points of high level with potential level of corruption. So we believe that taking these borders to a new digital level will increase the security of a country overall, because the borders are not only at an airport level. There are countries, small countries can have about 30, in Africa can have about 30 points of entry and exit. So you might close the borders at the airport to control the movement in your country, but you still have the land borders. So it's quite important that we also address how technology can solve the problems at the land border, okay? So now moving for the next slide, how technology can be an enabler of cross-border movements. So we believe there are two essential components to enable cross-border movements. One is the creation of a registered travel program. Mohammed already spoke about the registered travel program, and we think it's a key word that I would like to mention, the registered travel program. And we believe it's very important to create this registered travel program, enrolling the travel biometric and biographic data, and in the times that we are living, other health data that might prove that this citizen took a vaccine or is COVID negative. So, but overall, we believe that this registered travel program is quite important because there is a lack of standardized travel documents, electronic passports, or sometimes any ID document. So there is the need of creating a trusted identity with no large investments that we know that are necessary to create a national ID program. So we believe that this is a good compromise by creating a registered travel program to achieve this. Also, by installing a registered travel program in each border, you will allow business continuity. So meaning that even if you don't have connection to the central system, your border will still be open. So I think this is the first key point of why we should have the registered travel program. That's the first step. The second one is to automate the entry-exit procedure through an automated border control, eGates, or other touchpoints. Why? First, because it will speed up the traveler clearance and optimize the border capacity. And this is quite important. It's not, sometimes we think, okay, so the traveler will spend 15 seconds instead of 1 minute. That is the benefit of user experience, but it also has the benefit that the border doesn't have to increase capacity in terms of space. It doesn't need to build new verification points. And as we're going to see in the different use cases, this is quite important for the end customer. It will also help minimizing the interaction between the office and the travel, so it will diminish the corruption, and will also make that the immigration officer is focused on high-risk travelers instead of frequent travelers. So instead of the immigration officer being focused on 1,000 passengers, he will be focused on the ones that can create problem, maybe 1 or 2% of these travelers. So now let's go to real use cases, okay? And we are quite proud of this project, which is an installation of an automated passenger clear system in Rwanda, in the border between Rwanda and DRC, Poids-de-Lourdes. So the challenge is that this is such a busiest border with more than 40,000 travelers per day, that there was a need of having an efficient process with smaller queue lines, and that tackled the problem of having forged documents and deficient data. So what we did with the authorities was to implement first a registered travel program, where the traveler would be enrolled through his biometric and biographic data. A card would be printed, and then he would only need to be enrolled once, and then with that card, the traveler would go through the eGate, he would be identified on the database, and then he would be verified, and he would cross the border. During the process, a coupon would also be printed, so he could, if the immigration officials wanted to check afterwards if he passed the gate or not, that would be possible. Obviously, these gates are multimodal in terms of biometrics, so you can use the finger, but you can use the face or iris, so it can be a combination of biometric traits that makes sure that in the times that we are living, if the authorities want a fully touchless process, that is obviously totally possible. So the benefits were that there was an increase of the border capacity. The border was potentially started processing 40 travelers per minute, and there was also increase of security because now the verification was done through the biometrics, and there was real-time integration with watch lists. So this is one of the use cases for pedestrians. Now, if we go to other case study for truck drivers, and unfortunately we cannot say where this was located, but we can assure you that this was on one of the busiest borders for trucks in Europe, where the customer wanted to study a way to increase how to facilitate cross-channel freight traffic. So the challenge that this customer has is, as years went by, they were projected an increased freight traffic, and they didn't add space to increase the verification point. So they needed to find a way that how we can increase capacity without building more verification points because we don't have space. So here the project is in terms of, it was also built a two-step approach, where first the driver is enrolled on a database that we call the registered driver database, or as part of registered driver program. An ID card was issued to the driver, and then on a self-service process, once the driver is passing the border, as you can see on the left side, he would put his card, he would be identified and then verified with his iris and face. And the benefits were quite tangible. The verification process took an average of 9 seconds and enrollment less than 45. So there was also a satisfaction from the drivers. 99% of the users said the interaction was quite easy. So let's now go to our portfolio very quickly. So our portfolio, we can provide not only the touch points at an enrollment level, at the self-service, the traditional eGates, but we can also provide for the manual counter, the touch points for verification and enrollment, and then also the front ends for the officer to verify if it's a suspected traveler, it's not a suspected travel, what's the level of certainty on the biometrics. And also then all this information can be consumed, can be populated into user-friendly graphics where the authorities can take decisions. And we also provide a management platform to verify the health of the equipment. And speaking about equipment, we are showing the equipment here. Actually, there is the project in Qatar that was done in partnership with IRAS, like Mohamed explained before, Turkmenistan, the same thing. And all this information that is being generated by the touch points is orchestrated by our backend called Orchestra, that then can connect at the national level with a border management system. It can also connect with health database to do COVID-19 checks if necessary. This orchestration platform, Orchestra, is the only identity management platform that is certified by Privacy by Design. So I'm reaching to the end of my presentation. I would just like to leave some key takeaways. The first one is that, as we saw, the automated border control solutions are already deployed at African borders, at land borders, also with tangible benefits. It's possible to create a trusted identity for each traveler with no large investment, and therefore cross-border movement can be promoted and with increased security standards. So thank you. I'm reaching to an end. Thank you for giving the time to do my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Now we are going to go into discussions. And for those viewing, please send through those questions. We have experts to have them answered. Okay, just send them through the Q&A. The first question goes to Mohammed. There are concerns as regards contactless security to do with data, the technology around contactless. Someone is asking, how do we, what have you done to protect the data that is being passed through these contactless technologies?
Well, we follow the industry standards or the standards that are laid by a particular government where our systems are used. All the data that is generated when we are taking a picture of the individual that is secured in a passport or other type of formats. And we do not keep the data. Data belongs to either the individual who's carrying the card or is secure within the government entity. So we follow all the protocols that are required and necessary to secure the data. We use encryption, etc. So and follow the GDPR rules in Europe or in United States as they're prescribed.
I think in your presentation, I realized you're marking the frequent travelers. So your ability to be able to store facial images and then they identify that they are next travel.
Correct.
Have you faced any restrictions in some of the countries against data protection and privacy?
No, because when the country is looking to deploy these solutions, they have already gone through the legislative process, what to do with securing the biometrics. So we haven't had any pushback. Actually, we work with each country with that process. We are part of the ISO organization to make sure that the process is followed for securing the biometrics. And passport carries your face, and passport also carries your other biometrics. Part of that could be the template for iris. And the other part that people should be comfortable, the question of biometric security is actually that is providing a blanket for privacy for your other biographic data. So only you, as using the biometric and you're presenting yourself, that can have access to their biographic data because it's being protected by their biometric. So the compromising the biometric, I don't believe that is going to be an issue because it's encrypted, and then you have to be present to be able to use that biometric. I know it's a long answer. I hope I answered them.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. You did. At IMAD, SITA, someone is interested to know more about ITA working group to create interoperability data exchange models specific to the travel industry. We want to know more about the data standardization that is underway.
Okay, so just to repeat the question, someone wants to know the data standardization, or if there is a work group that includes the different provider. What exactly is the question?
I think you mentioned in your presentation about IATA work group to create interoperability data exchange models in the travel industry.
Yeah, no, I mentioned there are multiple work groups. So there are, an initiative done by IATA. There is an initiative done by the Common Pass project, to which we participate in both. But there are also a few other initiatives that includes commercial companies. Who is gonna really become the dominant is yet to be seen. But the exercise is obviously getting all countries to agree. It's going to take some time. It's probably going to work on a bubble basis first. Few countries or a couple of countries or few countries agreeing, and then extending that bubble to include other countries and getting to a point where they have enough participation that it becomes a standard. Now, if you're interested to know more, I'm not sure if my email is published, but I'm happy you can email me and I can send more details.
May I expand on what Imad said, please?
Please do, Mohammed.
Sure. So some countries have already have agreements or underway. So, for example, the Dutch government and U.S. government, Canadian government, U.S. government, they have these agreements are already in place where they can exchange this passenger data. I'm not talking about the itinerary data. I'm talking about other parts of it, and they have access to that. So, like Imad said, those are very important things. So maybe that we can consider a bubble between the 2 or 3 countries, but it is going to expand. And I know Dutch government has been in conversation. Maybe those agreements are already in place now between Japanese and Korean and British and other governments to be able to use and register in that registered traveler program in Schiphol, where they can have these passengers and then reduce the pressure on the immigration counters. So it's very important that that these governments start to come together, and then they have those discussions and they lay out the process how this data is going to be exchanged.
And I'm sure countries are having these discussions in the travel industry. At Chin, there is a question regarding how do you communicate with relevant authorities in the case of passenger symptoms like COVID-19?
Yeah, I think how we communicate is through a blockchain. So I think this has already been answered by one of my colleagues. So how do we communicate is using a blockchain technology. So basically, this is from the backend system, we build a system of trust.
We can't hear you, Chin.
Just a moment, sorry. Am I on mute? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so what we did is that the whole technology is built on a blockchain. So we actually built a system of trust in communication with the authorities in the back end, and that's how we communicate our information to all the relevant authorities.
All right, thank you. There are countries, there are a number of countries, mainly in Africa, that have not are still looking at blockchain. They've not really moved to that technology in that area. What happens in that regard if they need to use the technology?
I mean, if the blockchain is not available, we can always fall back on what we call the traditional system, and that is the public key infrastructure. You know, the PKI has always been a kind of a basic infrastructure that everybody communicates with.
All right. Thank you very much. At Mohammed, I'd like to know, you know, we have all ages of travelers. Does the technology cater for all ages? How do we deal with the children? How do we deal with certain age that I want to know where the technology has reached now? We can't hear you.
Yeah, I got it. I was on mute. This question I will answer in two ways. One, from a technology capacity and what it can do for a traveler, there is no restrictions for age. So you can enroll a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 12 years old, and of course an adult. And that's the strength of iris recognition. We can enroll in an individual at a very, very early age, and we have proven that in some other national ID programs, not as much as traveler program, but other national ID programs, where the children can be enrolled at an early age, and their biometric will not change. Their iris biometric will not change throughout their life. So it's one-time enrollment for the rest of their lives. The other piece of enrolling the children from a process perspective, some of our customers, I'm not going to say any particular name, but most of them have said, we do not want to enroll kids under the age of 12 or 14. They're going to be part of the family, and the parents will be enrolled into the biometric process, and they continue on. So technology has the capacity to handle the children. It is all depending on the countries and immigration processes, how they want to handle enrolling the biometric of those kids.
All right, thank you. I have a general question. Anyone willing to answer can pick it up. In Africa, we have issues with infrastructure. We know we have a coverage of mobile telecommunication, but majority are not smartphones. We would like to be part of this. No one should be left behind, should be inclusion. And just asking if there are innovation in that regard, maybe using the USSD, having a technology that is inclusive, that is not only looking at an educated individual that is able to use a smartphone, because we have a lot of travel on border countries, mainly business. And so we have the locals traveling, going to trade in neighboring countries. We should be able to cater for everyone. I don't know if anyone, any of you has any input in this.
I can pick up on that one. So from a perspective of, I'm talking again on the land border, not only talking about not having a smartphone, but not having any piece of ID. We believe that the Registered Travel Program will pick up on that, because it will do an enrollment of the traveler on the database. And this enrollment can be assisted, so it doesn't need to be a self-enrollment. So for people even with less educated to do this kind of services, they will have someone assisted. And then in terms of infrastructure, internet connection, like I was saying on the presentation, this registered travel program would be installed locally, meaning that even if you don't have internet connection, the border won't be down and you will be still able to process travelers. Although obviously to connect with external database, with external systems that are not installed on the database, it wouldn't be possible. But it would be still running it would be still possible to be running the system. So from the use case that I presented, I think the challenge of the lack of infrastructure and maybe sometimes education can be overcome.
And also, I like to pick up on that particular part as well. I think the earlier part we spoke about the M code. The M code is able to verify itself online and offline, and the carrier of the M code is actually not important, which means that it can be a smartphone, it can be a piece of paper. So that is the particular reason why we have developed it in such a way that the media is not really important, the carrier is not important, and so the governments do not need to spend a lot of I would say budget in creating a very expensive card. It can be any carrier, even as I mentioned, on a piece of paper, and it can be offline or offline. So that's part I would like to say as well. And this is part of being inclusive in terms of how we have developed this particular technology.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me divert, if you allow me, a little
Please,
bit
Mohammed.
from a traveler perspective to other ID application. So we have been working with an African nation called Somaliland from an inclusion perspective. So the biggest discussion happens in the continent of Africa, and it's happening in the United States today, is voter registration and how to eliminate and include everybody and eliminate fraud and include everybody in the process. So about four some years ago, we started a process in Somaliland for registering the voters. And what was amazing to us that how we were able to have these kits created, and they were part of the mobile infrastructure. So they were using the GSM communication channel to take the biometric and biographic data, compress it, send it over to the central site using the GSM connection and no hardwire connection. And this enrollment was done in small villages, a small town on the side of the roads, without connecting to any hardwire, and to be able to identify and enroll people during that process. So it's very important for us as technology provider and for solution providers to be able to look in Africa and overcome the disconnected challenges of the technology and what's available. And most of these people that we enrolled in Somaliland did not carry smartphones, so you cannot have the QR codes and other things. They were carrying those old Nokia type of phones, which has a 2-line display. So we need to be able to figure out, and those solutions are available. Is the idea that everywhere we're going to have a solution incorporated is not going to be very high tech, but you can use high tech to deliver a very, very simple approach solution.
Thank you, Mohammed. Then I have another question to all the speakers. We know some countries no longer require a traveler to go into quarantine, but others still have such a requirement. What do we need to put in place to allow international travel to happen without such a requirement? For example, if I'm to travel to Dubai for a business trip, I'm there for 1-day meeting. If I have to stay in a hotel for 14 days, 7 days, and then it's deterring this travel. So what ideas do we have?
If you allow me to take this, since this is very core to what we do. I hope my presentation was a long answer to your question, but the short answer would be, you have to really balance the risk and the measures that you take. Don't be extreme. So 14 days in a hotel, in our view, is very extreme. At the time where you could do testing, before. You could do testing on arrival. And then, if you take the UAE, where I'm right now, it's really very easy. You do your test, 96 hours or 72 hours, depending on where you're coming from. You do another one in the airport. You're asked to stay in your hotel or at home if you go back home until the result comes. The result comes anywhere between 6 to 24 hours. And then that risk is, proven to be very low. So, the quarantine at the time of testing and very soon immunization does not really make a lot of sense. If you get the right information from the passengers, you do the proper testing before arrival and upon arrival, then the risk is extremely low and there is no need for quarantine.
Well, in the United States, some airlines now are offering at the airport test before you get on the plane to go to Europe, and then they will have the results. So you are confident that you put the passengers on the plane, that they were clean, and then they got off the plane, they're clean. There is always going to be a slight risk, but if we can manage how that's done, and then once the vaccine happened, I saw on Imad's thing that they had the yellow fever card or whatever, then we carry a vaccination card. So people around me are comfortable and I'm comfortable that people who are traveling are vaccinated. And, it's all about how do we manage the risk.
So if I now let me give you an opinion of a traveler and not an expert in technology. First of all, I've since the last 3 months, I've been started traveling and I'm traveling at the same intensity than I was traveling before. And so normally when I travel, I need to make 3 COVID tests. One once I leave my country, other when I arrive the destination country, and other when I leave the country, the destination country. So it's 3 tests. Even in my country, I noticed that the way the test is done, it's not only the same way. So first, you have a problem of standardizing the test. Not always the test is done at the same time, the same way. So how can country A can trust on the way the test is done on country B, that even on country A the way the test is done is different. So then you have the same then you have this problem. So I think the way of sorting this is, and now I should give credit to an African country, Benin, that they have a very straightforward process. So before you reach the country, you enroll on a database with your biographical data, saying which flight you're going to get, which seat are you taking, all electronically, and you pay already online the COVID test. You reach to the airport. Once you land in the airport, once you leave the aircraft, you go straight to a tent where it's done a COVID-19 test. And as soon as the test is done, 15 minutes, you know the result. So you know that you can go home. And I believe this is one of the best ways of allowing travel to happen with no quarantine. Quick tests on arrival. I think in a short term, and this is my personal opinion, it will be very difficult to have some kind of certification of tests, especially because the way the tests are done are differently from even in each country. So this is my opinion as a traveler and not as a technology expert, okay?
Thank you.
You're right. You're right.
Thank you. Chin, do you want to say something?
No, I mean, I concur with George. I mean, today I can also speak from my experience from Singapore. So upon arrival, before when you come into Singapore, you are supposed to register yourself, pay for the test, and then once you're out of the luggage area, you are sort of like cornered into a area where you get your test. But we are a little bit more conservative from the perspective where we do not the results come out within 24 hours or 48 hours. So you still need to be quarantined for minimum at least 2 days before you're allowed to roam freely, or at least you're allowed to go home. So I mean, again, I agree with George. Every country tests differently. I think that the mitigation of risk, the risk assessment is very different from country to country. So it really depends on how individual.
Thank you, Chin. Just one last question. I know in Europe and in East Africa, there's acceptance of a national ID as a travel document. There is still resistance in some countries. There are issues to do with travel history. There's no way of recording travel history. Do we see a future where national ID, whether digital, whether online or offline verification, is able to work together with the passport to enable this travel happen? In Uganda, you can travel to Rwanda, you can travel to Kenya by presenting your national ID. We are working on integrating the systems so that we are able to do the verification. But there are some countries that still think that the national ID is not able to provide or to do what a passport is able to do. What's your take on that?
Sorry, I think this is more a political problem than rather a technological problem. You can see, you were talking about the national ID being used in Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, but there are always also other initiatives like the ECOWAS, where a common identity document will be used through the ECOWAS countries. So in my view, it's not a technological problem, it's a political problem. It's like in Europe, you can travel all around the countries with your ID document. Okay, there are some technology changes that need to be done, some standardization, but it's mostly a political problem, not a technological problem, in my view.
Yeah, so many regions, they have their region cooperation. So for example, between ASEAN countries, you can travel with an ASEAN card. One thing we have to remember, national ID cards don't particularly have a global standard. Every country have their own standard and what type of data. The reason we use passport, because there is a global standard what needs to be in the passport. How passport looks is a whatever it is, but what's inside the passport, there are some things that you have to have, and those are global standards, and you meet those. So I think unless we come up with a process that passport is no longer going to be a book, it's going to be a card, and you can use that for other ID purposes, we're still going to carry a card. This conversation, I've been involved in this industry for over 20 years, and this conversation is going on for 20 years. I want to travel from point A to point B, or country A to country B, without carrying my passport. Okay, the only way to do it is biometrics. Then now you have to have a political conversation between the two countries. Hey, would you accept this biometric that I am using? And then the situation comes in, oh, no. You cannot carry my citizens' biometric or keep it in your country. So it's like George said, it's a big mess of political decisions have to be made. So I think until then, I'm going to use my passport.
I can add one point. I think the technology is there for even not having your ID, for just your face is your ID. And I believe very soon we will start seeing, countries again, maybe on the bubble concept, between two countries, allowing the travel to happen and people to move freely just based on their face. No ID, no passport. How long it's going to take to get to Africa? I think I agree. It's more political than technology question.
All right.
I mean, between United States, Canada, and Mexico, we can't agree. Three of us. Europe is far advanced than us. All EU countries, you can travel without a piece of paper. But in North America and Canada, forget it.
I think we'd rather end this discussion at this point. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we really learned a lot.